I love making food-themed earrings. If you're a fan of quirky earrings that reflect your love for all things food-related, then this tutorial is for you. I will take you through the process of creating adorable bagel earrings using polymer clay. Before we start creating, you'll get the best results if you work on a glass or marble-like surface. This is to avoid your clay from sticking. You can also use cornstarch or flour just under your clay so that it won't stick to your hands or your surface. You're gonna need some white polymer clay. I use Sculpey Soufflé, but any Sculpey clay works, or any clay that's of decent quality will work for this. You'll need a craft knife or a small cutting blade. Something like this will work. Now this is optional, but it does help out with the shape. So these are gummy ring molds that I got at Hobby Lobby. You don't even have to use a mold at all. You could shape your hands to make an organic shape. This is going to help create a uniform shape. You're gonna need a toothpick. This is to create texture inside the clay. That's gonna make it look like the bread texture. Just makes it look more realistic. You're gonna need some pastel colors. Any warm color palette will do. Brown is the most important one to have to create the toasted texture on top of the bagel. You're going to need a paintbrush. Any paintbrush will work. This is to brush on the pastel onto the bagel to create that realistic texture. You don't necessarily need a Dremel. This is optional, but if you have sandpaper to help sand off the edges after your clay is done baking, a Dremel will help a lot, but if you just have sandpaper, then that works too. Then we're gonna need some liquid polymer clay. So this is for the cream cheese part. It's used to create that liquidy texture. And finally, you're just gonna need some basic earring supplies. So you're gonna use a plier. You're gonna need some hooks. We're doing a very basic assembly. There's tons of videos out there that'll show you exactly how to do that. Then you just need some jump rings and screw pins. And depending what color you want your findings to be, gold or silver or whatever you have. So this is everything that you'll need. So let's get started. So the first thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna soften up our polymer clay. Now this one is fairly soft. I played around with it earlier. You could run it through a pasta machine. I ran this one through the pasta machine a couple times, so it's pretty soft. But I like to warm up the clay. So I'm gonna roll into some shape like this. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just try to make it as even as possible. So you're gonna get equal pieces. Just cut it equally as best as you can. Okay. Now we have each one is half a bagel. So 2 is gonna be one bagel. Okay. So we're gonna get 2 pairs of earrings from this amount of clay. This should be roughly about the size of your finger. It depends on how big you want your bagel to be. If you want bigger bagels, which really depends on just how big you want it. The next thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna use our gummy ring mold, or you can use your fingers. Always double check that your molds are clean. You just don't want extra unnecessary dust to get into the clay. This clay has a little bit of lint already in it, but it's not that bad. It's really hard to avoid sometimes. So just do your best. A little bit of alcohol and a Q-tip goes a long way. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of roll this into like a little... I have this clay shaping tool. You could just use your finger if like you don't have one of these. The idea is you want to get the donut to be as flat as you can. It's actually so much more helpful if you put the flour or cornstarch at the bottom, which I didn't do. So let's hope that this comes out acceptable. If not, then I'll come back with some cornstarch and try it again. So now we're gonna gently pull out the donut. Pull it out. And it's okay if it's not perfect. It's gonna look wonky, but then you use your hands to kind of just give it that bagel shape. Take your time, just be slow with it. So you could use the back end of a brush or some other basic shape. And I always always work in the state of nearly perfect, not perfection, because we cannot be perfect. That is close enough for me, so that would make one bagel, but we're not done yet. Let's make these also. So I'm gonna have a couple. I want to make a couple, so, and I'll just run through it again so that way you can see it being done again. This time we're gonna get some cornstarch. So we got some cornstarch, so just kind of like give it a very simple dab. Doesn't need a lot. The good thing is this is white clay, so it's not really gonna show up on it. If you use any other type of color clay, sometimes it shows up when you bake it. And you can skip through this if you've kind of already mastered how to do it. It'll take longer if you do this with your fingers, so be patient. All right, ready to pull them out. So here's the first one. Be very gentle with it. Take your time. Should pop off easier than the first time, and it did. Perfect. Yeah, so just round it out like you were doing before. Those are our bagels. Now they're not perfect, but again, we're not aiming for perfection. We're aiming for fun and the joy of creating. As you have more practice shaping and making things, this will become a lot faster and a lot easier. Yeah, so now we're gonna do texturing. We're gonna grab half a bagel. So let's pick the best ones out of here to make today. So we're gonna use these two. That's our first earring, and we're going to use these two as our second earring. Okay, so you're going to flip them upside down. You're going to grab your toothpick, and you're going to make indentations like this. And take your time with it. This will take a couple minutes to do. So this is to create the texture of the bread. Depending on how detailed you want it, this could take you 5 minutes or it could take you 15 minutes. We're aiming for joy and fun here, so we're not going to take too long doing it, but you can get very detailed with this method if you so choose to. The edges are important, and you want to aim for randomness and irregularity. If you do it too uniform, then it starts becoming kind of like too perfect. And then it loses its organic look. Yep, just keep texturing it. Doing a little bit of a closer up so you could see. So you're gonna keep doing this until you get something like this. Same thing with the second bagel. Now that we're done giving our bagels some texture, we're gonna paint them to give them that golden, fresh baked look. So it's pretty easy to do that. You just flip it right side up, and you're going to grab your pastel colors. So I use a combination of different warm colors, but if you just have beige and brown, that'll work. So we got our pastels. We're gonna use our brush here, and we're gonna start painting. So as you can see, I use a mix of different colors here. I feel like this gives it more of like a range of colors. So you're just gonna start with the edges. Also, you want to be able to gauge and put too much on here as well. Just give it a nice toast. Focus on the edges. And as you go, try to smooth out areas that weren't smoothed out before. A little goes a long way. So some good areas to focus when you're painting is this very middle part and the edges. And then you can slowly blend it all in. Just give it more of a bagel shape. And with your brush, you could do motions like this to give it kind of like a bread wrinkle kind of thing. It doesn't have to be like picture perfect smooth. I think if you give it some texture like this, then it'll give it a little bit more realism. Yeah, just be slow and steady is key here. When you put your cream cheese in, it's gonna cover a lot of the texture. So this is why I also say it doesn't have to be perfect, or you don't have to spend too much time of it on it. Unless you're planning to do a bagel that has no cream cheese, then yeah, of course you want it to be as textured as possible. But the cream cheese will cover most of this. We just want to make sure that our edges are good. And just open up the hole again. It's all in the painting. This is going to take the longest out of all the parts in this tutorial. You want to aim for as much realism as you can. And some pieces are going to turn out way better than others. Okay, and then once our bagels are all painted, they're ready to be cream cheesed. Most of it is going to get covered by the cream cheese, but you want to make sure the edges are all nice and toasty. And if you need to do a little bit more texturing, this is a good time to do it now. The edges are the most important, because remember, the cream cheese is going to be covering most of it. Our bagels are ready to be baked. Before you bake, you want to make sure that the holes are the size that you want them to be, and that each bagel is roughly about the same size. So these are ready to be baked. Now you can use an oven or a toaster oven. You want to set the temperature to 275 degrees for 12 to 15 minutes. So now the bagels are out of the oven. We're ready to put cream cheese on. So now you want to grab like a tiny container, maybe like a bottle cap. I'm using a little beer cap here. So this is where I'm going to put the polymer clay with the white clay. I find that this size of this space is the best for mixing. And you're going to use some white clay, maybe like about this much. So very small amount. And you're just going to kind of put it in there. And then we're going to grab some of the liquid Sculpey, and we're going to put it on top like this. Probably about that much. You're gonna have to adjust. You want it to get to like a pasty consistency. This is easier to do with a popsicle stick, which I do not have right now. So we're just gonna have to work with this. So it'll take a little bit of time to mix it, but mix it you will. And this stuff is really sticky, so you wanna avoid touching it. You could wear gloves. I find that wearing gloves for this kind of work makes it a little difficult. That's your choice. If you want to wear gloves, it'll keep your area a little bit more cleaner. I just find it a little bit obstructing. It's not pasty enough. So we're going to keep adding a bit more clay, little by little. You don't want it to get too liquidy, because then you're going to have to add some of the dry clay in. You want to get rid of all these little like chunks, make it as smooth as possible. Now that we got our cream cheese, we're going to grab our bagels. Let's add a little bit more of the liquid clay. So now we're going to spread our cream cheese on our bagels. So you're just going to grab a tiny bit of the cream cheese spread. And you're kind of just going to spread it as if you're making a real one. You only need to do one side because we're going to put them together. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I like a lot of cream cheese on my bagels. So we're going to put a generous amount of cream cheese spread on our bagels. So that's one bagel down. Yeah, things are going to get a little bit messy. So just keep some sort of pad around, or some sort of napkin or paper towel to help you clean up a little bit, so that we have one. Now, because these are one set of earrings, what you're going to do is you're going to put them together, just like that. Squeeze, 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 squeeze. Perfect. And then you're going to add a little bit more realism on the edges. So when you're done with one bagel, you just put it to the side. So repeat the process. And things will get messy like this, but stay calm and fix it. I'm not really in the business of showing how to do things perfectly. I'm not the clay expert. I'm sure there's tons of videos out there that can help you make a more realistic one. Everything I offer, everything I do on my site, on my channels, it's to give people the love of just making stuff and just creating stuff. And once you get really good at it, you can monetize it any way that you want. I've sold these before for people saying out there that, oh, they're not really looking that realistic, or the process is messy. Yeah, that all can be true at the same time. Sold these at vendor markets and craft fairs, and people have bought them. They like them. I'm hoping that over time these will get better and more realistic looking. These aren't heavy. They might look heavy, but they don't feel heavy when you wear them. Now, of course, you can always make them smaller when you make your bagels. And this one's a little tall, but that's okay. Okay, and we got two delicious looking bagels here, which we're gonna put back in the oven. And the last thing I do is I just grab a tiny little pad or cotton or Q-tip or cotton pad thing, and just kind of wipe off any excess. Because if there's any traces of excess on the sides, it will show up when it bakes. Sometimes that can look messy. We just want to try our best. So they'll go back in the oven for another 10 minutes. Our bagels are out of the oven. Still a little warm to the touch, but this is the bagels. Looking pretty good, huh? So we just made bagels out of polymer clay. So now let's turn these into earrings. So the first thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna grab our bagel, okay? We're gonna pinpoint an area where we want our hole to go. Now this is where you can have a Dremel that has a drill attachment kind of thing. Or if you don't have that, then we're gonna use gold. So we're gonna use an eye pin, a screw eye pin with the screw pin. Polymer clay is pretty soft, so you're able to screw it in and seal it that way. You have to be careful, because if you do it too much with too much force, or the wrong amount of force, then it could crumble and you're gonna have to use some glue for it to stay. So to get the best practice, what we're gonna do is we're gonna pick a place that's a little bit, so this is good. Right here is a good spot. So I'm going to mark it with like a little hole. And then I'm going to grab my plier and I'm going to grab my screw pin. Aim for the hole and then twist the bagel. You want to be very careful. Twist the bagel. And at one point it's going to be a little bit sturdier, so then you can use the plier to finish it being all the way to the end. And then you're going to have your screw pin facing the bagel, so like this. And now you have an attachment. Now, I typically, when I sell these, I do not just sell it like this. I usually put resin on top. When I resin all of it to make it shinier. I use resin to seal the bagel, but then I also put resin around the screw pin so that there's an extra layer of protection on there. I think this will be fine. It's just that if you want it to last longer, you might want to put some glue or some sort of some sealing agent to make it more durable. So we're going to do the same for this bagel. So there you go, just like that. Pretty easy. I'm not really gonna like go into too much details. I'm just gonna show you how I do it. So this is KC Gold. It's a little bit lighter than this, so we're gonna use these. You only need 2. So these are pretty easy to open. Some of them are thicker and you're gonna need 2 pliers. Your nails or your fingers, they're not really that tough to move. Just move it to the side. Attach it. And then you're gonna grab a hook of your choice. I do not have any KC Gold hook, so I'm just gonna use a regular gold hook. Just put it in there. And there's one. Beautiful. It's pretty easy. You open up the jump rings to the side, you put it in, and then you close it. That's how you make some bagel earrings. Now I'm gonna go seal these with resin. It'll give them an extra shine and make them a little bit more durable. And these will be up for sale at my shop if you like them.